Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Good Living talk. So Camylla speaks Portuguese. So Dan is going to be translating to Camylla during this presentation and during the talks. So it might take a little bit longer, but that's the way round we can do it. And I just wanted to welcome everyone. I just got a bit somewhere else. And welcome to the this Good Living talk as part of the Being Human Festival.
Live Bem Viver faz parte do festival Sendo Humano.
That we're producing with Climate Museum UK and Culture Declares Emergency.
Os colaboradores são a Cultura Declara Emergência e o Museu de Cultura Reino Unido.
And I'm multitasking as well because I'm letting people in. So sorry for that. Okay. I'm going to just start off really by just explaining a little bit about Climate Museum UK. Is a mobile and digital museum.
Museu digital e móvel.
Creating, stirring and collecting responses to the climate and ecological emergency.
Esse museu está juntando, colecionando respostas à emergência climática.
Culture Declares Emergency is a group of organizations, people and organizations, artists in the cultural sector who've come together to work on issues around and projects around the culture, the climate and ecological crisis.
A declaração emergencial sobre o clima é uma coleção de pessoas provocando ações sobre a questão de colapso climático.
So just straight in now into introductions. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to pass on to one of the other speakers to do the same. My name is Jamie, and the color of my eyes is kind of greeny brown. They're probably more brown than green. And my ancestry is Scottish, and I've been told that my father's Scottish, and I've been told that it's part of the Moray of Atholl clan, and there's a bit of, like, apparently in the Battle of Culloden, that if Bonnie Prince Charlie had listened to the leader of the Moray clan, they probably would have beaten the English. So that he didn't. He wanted a European war rather than like a war of attrition. But anyway, and I'm sitting in front of. Oh, sorry, Dan, please.
No, go for it. You can complete.
And I'm sitting in front of a beautiful this old building with old oak that goes back many hundreds of years. That we when we got this building, it's a shop in an old market town, and we took out all the wood chip wallpaper, and we discovered all this beautiful old oak that was hiding behind all that. But also many sort of structural things started to fall down as well. So that's really a good thing.
O Jaime, ele tem uma raiz escocesa, ele tem olhos verdes, ele está na frente de uma parede cheia de madeira que tem séculos e séculos de idade.
Okay, so now I'm going to pass on to Dan.
My name is Dan. I have green-blue eyes. I am Celtic and Latin in origin, and I am sitting in front of a poster of Afro-Mundi Dance Company that uses dance to preserve and defend the Amazon. Eu falei que eu sou latino-celta, eu tenho olhos verdes azul, eu estou na frente de um cartaz de Afro-Mundi que usa dança para preservar e defende a Amazônia. Eu vou passar para Camylla. Camylla, quem é você?
Oi, eu sou Camylla Alves.
I'm Camylla Alves.
Sou dançarina amazônica.
Não pode falar só sobre os olhos, a pele, cabelo e o que está.
Sou descendente de afro-indígena.
Camylla is Afro-Indigenous in origin.
Da pele clara com os cabelos grisalhos.
She has clear skin. Her eyes are castaña brown, and she uses curled hair. Camylla, te
Estou
passo para a Nila.
agora Nela. Nelam-
Camylla is passing to you, Neelambari.
Hi, I am Neelambari. My eyes are light brown, brown hair, Indian on a British island in a 1930s house, facing my garden, sitting on a dining table.
It's Neelambari,
Yes.
Camylla. Ela tem olhos castanhos, ela tem pele clara, ela é de descendência indiana. Ela está numa ilha britânica e ela está olhando para o jardim dela. Great.
Thank you. I'm going to pass on to Neelambari for your presentation, please. Could I just ask Dan, if you could switch your camera off, please, so we can just see the presenter. Sorry about that. And I made you host, Neelambari, so that you can show a presentation if you need to.
Yeah.
Camylla, Neelambari vai apresentar agora, ok?
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, Camylla, eu vou agora entrar a tradução para ti, tá bom? Porque nós dois não somos tão importantes agora.
All right, there we go. Good evening to everybody here, and good evening, and maybe probably good night elsewhere. I'm Dr. Neelambari Phalkey. I'm a postdoctoral researcher in the School of Geography, Earth and Environmental Sciences in the University of Birmingham. Today I'm going to talk about two things. One is my engagement in my research, and then also the engagement I have with art and art related work. So my research engagement is mainly, I work in the interventions or at the intersection, the junction between environmental sciences and the social sciences, mainly in climate change and migration, risk and resilience. My doctoral thesis and postdoctoral work has been in the Sundarban Islands, a mangrove ecosystem in the northeast of India, which is currently experiencing high number of disaster events in the past decades. And I have been trying to understand what is happening to the region, to its people. In risk and resilience, I'm trying to understand the kinds of hazards that are experienced in the region, the ecosystem and its people. So what kind of hazards? So mainly cyclones, flood, storm surges, ecosystem, mainly mangrove ecosystem, and the people who live in this place. There are roughly around 4.8 million people who live in this mangrove ecosystem. It's highly sensitive to climatic change. So any 0.5 degree or 1 degree change would submerge large sections of these islands. And that would mean that a number of people and their livelihoods will be affected in near future. We are expecting that by 2030, a large area of this island region would be pretty much submerged in the sea. The impacts of hazards I'm looking at, especially the island households. This is the picture I took. So most of the pictures are from my work. This is the picture which I took of an island where you can very well see a tube well, a hand pump for water, a tree that is destroyed, and the island where there used to be a house. There is no house anymore. So this is the kind of impact that you see on the shoreline where saline water gets into the island floors, destroys homes, destroys livelihoods, destroys ecosystem completely. I mean, this land has been, the picture this I took in like around 2009-10. And when I visited again in 2019, we could see that still the space, the land mass has further degraded, and we could not find any kind of cultivation happening. And I think this year, especially in 2020 and 21, during when the COVID was up in arms around the world, we see that in Sundarbans, we had a big cyclone called Amphan, and that really destroyed further. So the impact had already experienced from 2009, and now in 21, we see that this has really been a very hard year for the islanders. Sorry, can I just, yeah. So when we see that when the islands become completely inhabitable, uncultivable, people do not have any other means. So when the fish is depleted, the land is submerging, the ecosystem is degrading, the only way that people find way outside is to migrate. And in geographical terms, we would call them as adaptive migration. So it's a kind of adaptation where communities decide to move away from the harm to a safer place. So here, this is a picture of a junction in Calcutta, where you find people come to this place first before going to different, slum areas in the city of Calcutta. So this, by 2030, we expect that at least 1.5 million people would be displaced by the submerging islands and sea level rise, and no livelihood opportunities. And we've already seen that. I also look at urban resilience. So when migrants, so this picture shows a shanty near the south of Calcutta where migrants live. You see extremely high rises, extreme high rises with really rich people, and then you see the shanty below where most of the migrant households live. And I'm trying to understand how these migrant households adapt to the new city, new livelihoods, new income sources. What are they doing? How is their health? What are the new vulnerabilities they're experiencing? And we see that when people move from, say, Sundarbans, which is already a very, very becoming an area where people's lives are becoming rather, what do you say, uncomfortable. Moving in the city is not necessarily becoming comfortable, because one, you end up in slums. These are also areas which have a lot of disease, and then you have access to power, water. So you can see also that the electric line which is running across the photograph, people pull in power to do that. There's a lot of mafia, institutional harassment from the police, from the city authorities. So it's not an easy life. Also in 2020, 2021, we have seen with Cyclone Amphan that it caused a lot of destruction in the city of Calcutta itself. So it's not enough safe to now be living here, because the storm and the cyclone impacts are now also, and the flooding is now also experienced in Calcutta. So now where do these people move from here? And I think this is a big question we all researchers have, is to understand their needs. What do they really need? And I think COVID has taught us that, we have to have inclusive processes. And I think this is what my research is trying to understand, their well-being, how we can accommodate people in our spaces, because there is no other choice. We have to accommodate all the people who will get displaced in future events. I'll talk a little bit about my art engagement. So I'm also a film maker and a photographer, and I'm also a painter. So this is one of my paintings from Mangrove series, which I started just after my field work in the Sundarbans, because when I saw the desperate lives and desperation and the pain of the people, I think there was no space in academic journals to express this distress, or there's no space for emotions to express what researchers feel when you really carry out research in very, very precarious lives and situations and conditions and geography. And I have been painting for a long time, so there was no other thought process. I had to get back to painting and to get back to my photography and to look at films. So, I tried to, what do you say, make my pain a bit better by doing this and expressing what I felt. And this is one of the paintings where I think it is about a mangrove. It's a mangrove forest, and I tried to visualize it in my way of art. Now I'll talk about indigenous relationality. Sorry. In particularly Bon Bibi, the lady of the forest. And this photograph I took on one of the temples near the forest areas. And this especially because this talk is about understanding indigenous understanding of forest and their relationships and conservation, and I thought that there is no other bigger story that can come from the region, and it is the story of the Bon Bibi. Bon in Bengali means forest, and Bibi just means a lady, and so Bon Bibi is the lady of the forest. And in the region, we can observe a mix of culture and religion in form of festivals that exists on the island. There are 4 categories, I would say, 4 categories in which I see that the deities of where, protecting people from natural disasters. There are ones which protect you from diseases. There's one they believe in who will protect them from external attacks. So the main forest deity, of course, is the Bon Bibi, and it has its origin in Islamic culture. And the second category which I talked about was the deity that many people remember when they travel is Bishak Lokhi. These names are very difficult, I can understand, but they are just meaning that someone who shows direction as you travel into these waterscapes. So this deity is always remembered when people travel into this maze of creeks and islands. There are also deities which are worshipped for environment, because people believe that if they do that, then the deities will take care of them. So instead of focusing on that, I'll just focus on Bon Bibi, because I think that is the one of the biggest, and a tale that is passed over from generation to generation on the island. The legend says that the deity was sent far off from Arabia to the Sundarbans. The Sundarban is literally translated in English would be the beautiful forest. And she was sent to save the people from the tyranny of Dokhin Rai. So Dokhin Rai was this person who would guise as a tiger and would stalk and kill people in the forest. So the islanders believe that the forest belongs to those who are poor and who have no intentions to exploit it, and they will only take what they need from the forest. So how they see life is that, which requires one, a very pure heart, and second, empty hands. And by purity of heart, it means enter without the intent of exploitation, and empty hands with enter without weapons. So there are 2 ways only that you can enter into the forest. And Bon Bibi, therefore, is a personification. So the lady in the picture in the center is the Bon Bibi, is the personification of the forest itself, and which overrides the faith. So it translates between, Islam and Hinduism, and also the tribes. And it affirms the commitment of all the inhabitants of the island towards the mangrove forest. So every year there is, on the Bangladesh side of the mangrove forest, there is something called a Bon Bibi Jatra. A Jatra in Bengali, or in translation to English, would mean an enactment of a tale of the deity. And the message from the tale is very simple. The book says, they have a small booklet as well. which actually came up sometime in the medieval ages. And the simple message is, if the forest exists, then the tiger lives, and only can then the humans flourish. So I think the community has a very clear what do you say, a roadmap of living in coexistence, not only with the humans around them, but also with the non-human and ecosystems around. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Neela. Could you make me the host again, please? Three little buttons to the top right of my icon, and then make me the host. And now I'll put my camera on. that was lovely, thank you. Now I just wanted to pass on, please, to Dan.
Thanks very much, Jamie. And I just want to say to Neelambari, your presentation was very inspiring and very powerful. And I was translating simultaneously to Camylla. Camylla estava traduzindo e estou agradecendo ela pela apresentação muito forte. And I think that Camylla, as someone who was born in the Amazon, and me as someone who lives in the Amazon and in Camylla's community, can identify strongly with many of the themes that you touched on there, particularly climate refugees, and particularly because we have actually dramatized that, but also in our dance narratives, our dance theatre, but also particularly the old stories that get passed from generation to generation to deal with these crises. Camylla está falando que a gente pode identificar muito com esses refugiados climáticos que a gente já dramatizou dentro dos nossos teatros de dança e música. E também essas antigas histórias que vão ajudando as pessoas a lidar com o voto, por exemplo, lidar com questões que são críticas. So everyone, I just want to say good afternoon to you. I'm speaking to you from the capital of Pará, which is in the north, the Amazonian state of the north, which is suffering the greatest levels of assassination, of murder, of human rights and climate activists, good living activists. And I want to thank Jamie for your invitation, and to thank Culture Declares Emergency and the Climate Museum for this possibility of sharing a video which was screened for the first time last night in Australia about our 20-year collaboration with the Indigenous people in Bahia, where Brazil was first colonized. That's the narrative that the Indigenous and most progressive people see and think about, as opposed to the discovery narrative, which is taught in many schools, but which has been discredited. So, Jamie, if I can invite you to show this video, this will be our contribution. It's in Portuguese and in English, so it won't need any translation.
Okay, and apologies for the people that I've kept waiting and not admitted. I'm sorry. I'm glad you've joined now. So if everyone could mute, that'd be great. Thank you.
Camylla, eu falei que a gente vai apresentar o vídeo que acabei de apresentar na Austrália ontem à noite. Está em inglês e em português, então tu vai acompanhar sem dificuldade. Thanks, Jamie. It's with you.
For the Amazon we struggle and cry out. 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 Listen to the cry of the forest. Listen to the cry of the forest. Her sons and daughters clamor for justice.
Here, alongside Tocantins River, in the city of Marabá, 10 years after the murder of Maria and her husband Zé Cláudio. Viva Maria Viva. I was there, strong and serene, in the same place for years. I served you with my beauty and fruit. And suddenly, I no longer exist. You approached not to harvest or to embrace me, but to begin your ritual. I cried with pain, but you silenced me, bit by bit, devastating me, until I fell to the ground. But I still have roots. I will shoot up, yes, between the teeth of your chainsaw.
This poem was written by Claudenir Ribeiro, which is Claudenice's sister, sisters of José Cláudio, a group of extractivist artisan women here from the region who carry on with this important struggle, inspiring us so that we can resist.
Contemporâneo dizer que a gente não é indígena só porque a gente usa roupa, só porque a gente também usa celular, a gente não parou no tempo, não. Do jeito que o homem branco evoluiu, a gente também evoluímos. Eu quero a minha casa, eu não quero sair do meu território. Meu povo não vai sair do território porque lá é nosso, por direito, está na Constituição. O meio ambiente somos nós. A cura da cidade nos adoece, a comida da cidade nos adoece, mas lá não, a gente tem um remédio, nós temos uma raiz e dizer que nós temos sim uma economia. Esse aqui, ó, é de Tucumã, esse aqui, ó, de osso dos animais, mas a gente sim, a gente cria, a gente vende copaíba, a gente vende andiraba, cumaru, mas é um dinheiro que vem da floresta, é um dinheiro que não é do ouro, é um dinheiro que dá destruição, não, é da natureza, é da floresta, e plantadas mandioca, batata, cana, mas está lá. Mas nós nunca destruímos, nunca botamos uma máquina para destruir hectares de terra. E dizer para o Senado, vote, pensa no meio ambiente, pensa.
Eu sou um artesão e trabalho com reciclagem de pedaços de tronco. Isso é uma forma de a gente preservar a natureza, porque o artesanato também ele sempre foi uma grande subsistência para os índios, um elemento de troca, um elemento de sabedoria, um elemento de riqueza, um elemento de ajuda. Com 19 anos eu estava aqui construindo um monumento de resistência dos povos indígenas do Brasil, onde tem aqui os nomes dos nossos parentes, os nomes dos nossos antepassados em memória aos povos extintos, para poder garantir a nossa cultura, o nosso direito, a nossa sabedoria. Esse Pé de Pau Brasil ele tem 22 anos e hoje ele ameaça derrubar o nosso monumento. E agora uma grande pergunta que eu faço, nós corta ele ou deixa ele viver?
Oxeha, yo heroe, jaha hoteho patachó, me anichi no moison, jaha yo han, pachicha, jaha topehe paripona kasaka, ahohe me a yena pinato achohan patachó, me anichi no moison, jaha hoteho uskesho, na pinato pakihe patachó kasaka. Ate hoteho na achohan, hoteho kuskui, ahorreio angurá, han pu hacha, yamã.
Olá para todos, meu nome é Yamani Patachó, trabalho com ecoturismo. Esse é minha parte de trabalho. Temos a tanga, o pitai, que é feito com o barbante, o açaí e o cricó. Aqui temos o cocá, a trança, a pena de pato, a pena de arara e um brinco que nós colocamos para enfeitar. Aqui é outro brinco, aqui é meu cordão e meu tupiçai.
Eu te respondo. Bom dia, me chamo Ikihan Patachó, sou professora. Vejo que a escola em si, ela tem um papel importante, mas vejo também que outros espaços servem de aprendizado. Aqui onde eu estou é um espaço de formação, acredito eu, assim para mim e para meus alunos. A comunidade, ela tem um conjunto de plantas medicinais, temos plantas frutíferas e eu vejo que esses espaços que traz aprendizado para a gente, traz um pouco da nossa ancestralidade, trabalhar com a terra, trabalhar com a planta, conhecer cada planta que a gente tem na nossa comunidade, conhecer as árvores, né, que tem uma importância para cada um de nós. Esse preto que está destacado aqui, que para a gente ela vem da fruta do genipapo, né? E o vermelho é do urucum. Essas informações de plantas, né? Que também traz essa força para a gente. Ela, ao mesmo tempo que ela embeleza ao rosto, ao corpo, ela também traz essa força de ancestralidade, de luta mesmo. O genipapo, a fruta dele, a gente pode tirar o caldo, né, dele, tomar como suco ou fazer o chá para quem tem problema de anemia. Esse ensinamento ele vem já desde casa, desde o convívio com sua família, né, que desde quando a gente passa a ser mãe, né, no meu caso mesmo, quando eu passei a ser mãe, eu já tinha vários conhecimentos em relação às plantas medicinais. E hoje os meus filhos já conhecem um pouco desse ensinamento, porque quando eu vou fazer algum medicamento, algum chá, né, um xarope de folhas medicinais, eles estão acompanhando. Então, é um ensinamento que vai passando ali dentro da própria casa, né, dentro de casa ali, da avó, da mãe. E aí são ensinamentos que devem ser levados também para a escola, né? Porque nós temos conhecimentos internos, nós temos conhecimentos tradicionais que nos foram ensinados que a gente também deve estar repassando. O monumento em si é um espaço que traz essa formação para a gente, né? É um espaço onde a gente está conectado com a natureza e representa a nossa resistência, que hoje está ali fortalecido, né, novamente. Então, é um espaço de buscar a força, de buscar uma energia positiva, de buscar a positividade, né, principalmente para os momentos atuais no qual a gente está vivendo. A questão da PL 490, a questão do marco temporal. esses movimentos, né, que acontecem na BR, acredito que para os jovens, né, não foi só um momento ali de estar cantando, de estar dançando, foi um momento também de fortalecimento, um momento no qual eles mesmos tiveram conhecimentos a fundo, né, do que eles pensavam, de que todo movimento ele está engajado com a cultura, ele está engajado com a luta mesmo e com a força mesmo da ancestralidade.
Aqui é um lugar maravilhoso, lindo. Aqui você vai aprender um pouco de tudo, da medicina, da ancestralidade. Mas para vocês saber mesmo, eu convido vocês para conhecer a Universidade Pataxó do Monte Pascoal.
Listen to the cry of the forest. Listen to the cry of the forest. Her sons and daughters clamor for justice. Her sons and daughters clamor for justice. Stop the genocide. Stop the ecocide. Stop the genocide. Stop the pandemic.
Pisa, 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 pisa devagar. Ou pisa devagarinho na folha do Jurema. Pisa, 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 pisa devagar. Ou pisa devagarinho na folha do Jurema. Pisa, 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 você torna a repisar. Ou pisa devagarinho na folha do Jurema. Pisa, pisa.
Let me just say thank you very much, Jamie, for showing that video. You saw there the Indigenous monument to 500 years of resistance created in 2001, and 20 years later, that monument has inspired people to recover their own Indigenous language, Pachohai, and a whole new generation of cultural activists, of climate activists, and how all of that is transforming education to create a good living education for a good living future. Thanks, Jamie. And we can pass, if you want, to Camylla. Should I say that? Yeah, Camylla, elas vão apresentar agora os últimos 15 minutos do espetáculo. A ballerina, a dançarina e a ballet. Tá bom? Okay, so Jamie, Camylla is happy to show the last 15 minutes of the performance, the whale and the dancer. And this is Camylla's most recent piece that we worked on together, was premiered this year. And this performance is based on a dream that Camylla had, visited by a whale in the urban Amazon, the city of Maraba. And she, in the first half of the performance, experiences the heartbreaking and painful waiting for the pandemic to end. And then in the course of her kind of listless experience, she's visited by a whale. And this is her experience inside the whale. Thanks very much, Jamie. That, just to say, is also about resilience. And in this case, a person is a refugee, not just from climate collapse, but also a refugee from a future that has no date. A young person who looks at the world with no future and gets counsel from a whale. Camylla Phalkey, nesse caso, é também sobre risco e resiliência. E no caso de ti, se refugiando em casa do mundo sem futuro. Thanks, Jamie. And thanks to everyone for watching.
Thank you. If people want to ask questions, if you could type them in the chat, please. And I'll do my best to moderate that. And I just wanted to start off really, if that's okay, because I'm just aware of the dream text, and whether it be possible was that the dream text that you sent that started the dream, the writing out of the dream that started this performance?
Yeah. Okay. So let me put that question to Camylla. So, because she's the dreamer as well as the dancer. Camylla, o Jaime ele perguntou como começou esse espetáculo. Ele sabe que que sonhou sobre uma baleia, mas se quiser contar frase por frase, eu vou traduzir a resposta.
Eu vou tentar, que a internet tá meio bloqueando aqui. Mas foi de um sonho que eu tive, né? Na verdade, a gente já vem trabalhando um tempão, assim, uns 7 anos, com a questão da raiz, né? Da identidade, mas também com as críticas de hoje em dia com a realidade do Brasil e do mundo. E eu fui surpreendida por uma baleia no meu sonho, o que levou a criar esse espetáculo.
So Camylla is saying that she and I have been working together for more than 7 years, looking at climate collapse and looking at making, critical dance work about the situation in the Amazon and the situation inside Brazil. And she was visited by a whale in a dream. Camylla, tu foi visitada por uma baleia às 4 horas da manhã, foi?
Sim, às 4 horas da manhã foi quando eu te mandei mensagem, né?
So she was visited early in the morning, and at 4 or 5 in the morning, she sent 45 messages to me narrating this dream. And Camylla, como esse sonho se transformou em espetáculo? Pode falar frase por frase, eu vou traduzir.
Na verdade, eu não imaginava transformar ele em um espetáculo, né? Porque eu não sabia realmente o que o meu sonho queria dizer para mim.
She didn't actually realize that this dream would become a performance. To begin with, she just wanted to know what was the meaning of a whale visiting someone in the urban Amazon.
E só depois que eu tive a conversa com o Dan Baron, que eu fui ter certeza de que o animal, no caso, a baleia, ela representa, no caso, a história, né, da humanidade. E ela mostrasse, no caso, para mim, no meu caso, ela quis que eu fizesse mostrar, né, no caso, a história do mundo, a evolução.
Yeah, so it was only through our conversation that same morning, and then over the next 9 months, that Camylla came to understand the importance of the whale. Through our dialogue and her research, came to understand the importance of the whale carrying the entire memory of the world. And inside that memory, she encounters her indigenous roots, which are sleeping. Camylla, só para completar essa primeira pergunta, tu encontrou na história do mundo tua história indígena adormecida. Sim? Isso...
Na verdade, já são mais de 6 anos que a gente vem trabalhando com a questão da história dos nossos antepassados, da raiz africana. Então, todos os espetáculos que a gente faz, a gente deixa bem claro essa afirmação das raízes também, indígena e africana, no sangue de cada pessoa.
So Camylla is saying, just to respond to this first question and to complete this answer, that over the last 7 years, 10 years, every performance narrative researches roots, ancestral roots, and Camylla has researched her African ancestry, and this is the first dance theatre narrative where she researches her Indigenous roots. But it's a celebration of Indigenous ancestral force, ancestral roots. Valeu, Camylla. Bom.
So can I ask Neelambari, please, to if you wanted to come in at this point?
Yeah. Hi, I have a small question for Camylla. Actually, I wanted to know what does veil signify in the culture? I mean,
pergunta pequena para ti, Camylla. Yes.
Não entendi, né?
Não, ela tem uma pergunta para ti. Ela vai falar. What's your question?
Yeah. So my question is, in the context of culture, what does veil as a species signify, and is that dream something as a message, or does she perceive it as something which is connected to maybe a whale is kind of like in Sundarban, the tiger is taking a form of something, is whale taking a form of something, and is the message, or she is the receiver, does she see herself as a medium, so to say, of understanding this message from the larger world, that she has the vehicle to maybe bring change, or how does she see this whole, and also the significance of whale as a creature? I think I'm quite intrigued. I want to know that.
Ela está, Camylla, Neela está bem fascinada com a apresentação. Ela quer saber qual é o significado hoje para ti da baleia, se a baleia faz parte da cultura comunitária, cultura afrodescendente, ou como que é para ti. E a segunda pergunta é se tu está sentindo que isso foi uma mensagem, que tu recebeu uma mensagem, qual foi o significado dessa mensagem para ti?
Então, antes desse espetáculo, né, eu não tinha muito conhecimento sobre o que significava o símbolo da baleia, né?
So before this performance, she didn't really have an understanding of the significance of the whale.
Então, depois do espetáculo, eu vejo que a baleia, ela simboliza basicamente tudo que existe nessa terra, né?
But then she understood through the research, she really understood. So the whale doesn't have a living significance inside her community culture or African culture, but she understood that through research. Sim, Camylla. E a pergunta, Camylla, a segunda pergunta, se tu é mensageira, qual foi essa visita para ti?
Na verdade, eu passei assim, na pandemia, pensei que eu não ia fazer nada na minha vida, né?
So during the pandemic, she felt she was doing nothing in her life. She was just waiting.
E assim, eu começo a sonhar com muitas coisas assim estranhas.
And she began to really dream about all kinds of strange desires, strange things.
E eu cheguei a falar com o Dan, né? Assim, essa é só a questão da baleia que foi o motivo de eu chegar nele e falar sobre esse meu sonho.
And then through talking to me about this, she began to see herself as receiving a message. Qual foi a mensagem, Camylla?
Porque foi um sonho que me tocou bastante e que eu acordei muito assim, sem entender o que aconteceu.
She actually woke with no real clarity about the message. What happened? What happened?
E até então eu não sabia que eu seria a mensageira, né?
She didn't realize at that point that she was becoming a messenger really for her generation.
Até entender o verdadeiro significado da baleia.
Only until she really began to understand the historical significance of the whale.
E aí, quando eu parei para pensar e conversando com o Dan, refletindo sobre tudo que estava acontecendo nos dias atuais, né? A gente resolvemos... Eu acho que eu falei, então, acho que é uma mensagem que eu tenho que dar, né? Eu fui a premiada para dar essa mensagem para o povo, né?
She felt in some way she had been blessed. She had been celebrated for her sensitivity to receive this message. Camylla, eu acho que essa baleia te incentivou, superar, incentivou resgatar a coragem de sonhar.
Sim, na verdade, porque eu estava bem apagada, né? Então, assim, foi tudo de uma vez. Foi o sonho, depois começaram a informar, no caso, o edital, né? E assim, eu pensava que eu não ia fazer mais nada no meu ano. E aí foi quando apareceu o sonho da baleia, e logo veio o edital para eu poder fazer esse espetáculo. Então, a gente logo entrou no edital. Eu fui premiada pelas as primeiras posições, né? Com a primeira premiação. E assim, a gente viu que realmente era que nós tínhamos que fazer esse espetáculo. Mesmo com a dificuldade perante a pandemia.
Yeah. So Camylla she is saying essentially that this dream, this visit, inspired her to act, not to remain passive. And this was important in terms of she felt that not just the year, but her whole life was going to be wasted, was going to be lost. And there would be no future. And the whale inspires her to discover the resilience of her Indigenous ancestors, then of her African ancestors. And then she goes through the kind of industrial wasteland, the violence of industrial work. And she comes through that, embracing the energy of African dance. Before, she had been afraid to actually touch her costume. Now she received an award. She organized her entire year, and she is, in a sense, embodying for her community and for her city the possibility of surviving not just the pandemic, but climate collapse. Eu acho que, Camylla, tu está sentindo que tu está superando, não só para ti, mas talvez para outras. Talvez para a cidade, talvez para a região. Tu acha que as pessoas olhem para esse espetáculo sentindo é possível abraçar o sonho?
Sim, na verdade, hoje, agora olhando o vídeo, né, a gente chega, claro, nós fizemos isso mesmo. A ficha que ainda não caiu, que foi tão rápido. Então, assim, e é tão forte, né? Então, nunca caiu a ficha ainda que eu realizei esse espetáculo, né?
So Camylla is just saying, to complete, looking at the video, she looks at that in shock, seeing how it was possible to overcome the pessimism, overcome the fear, to embrace the needs for solving the climate collapse.
E durante ele aconteceu tanta coisa, né? Desde da dificuldade com a criação dele, né? Depois também com a dificuldade de lidar com a pintura indígena, assim que eu fiz a pintura, então foi a última dificuldade, bastante, sofri uns preconceitos machistas pelo fato da pintura estar no meu corpo, em uma pele branca, e assim, foram 6 meses de muita intensidade, provocações e desafios, mas a gente conseguiu fazer. E hoje, quando eu olho assim, eu fico, conseguimos, né? Creio que ele está chegando a muitas pessoas e conseguindo conscientizar também as pessoas, abrir os olhos das pessoas e ver que realmente...
I don't know whether you're getting this, Neela and other people, because it's quite unstable, the connection in the Amazon. But Camylla is saying, just to conclude, Jamie, so we can pass to Neelambari.
I'll say obrigado to Camylla.
She just wanted to say that what was really the front was that in painting her body, and she began by saying she is of a clear skin, and painting her body with Indigenous graphismo was an extraordinary experience, both for her. She received a lot of energy, but also from in the streets, she received a lot of macho violence, a lot of urban prejudice. People were spitting insults at her. And she only had that for 10 or 12 days. But for the Indigenous people, like those I work with and in the video, to have that for 520 years is extraordinary violence. You know? And she appreciates that now, literally in her skin. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Question from Haley. This relates also, I think, to Neela's point of view about no space for emotions for researchers and the need to make work and embody those emotional expressions in a process of creative, emotional creative work. Haley wanted to ask how it felt after the performance. Was that the kind of an embodiment of emotional release in terms of that performance?
Camylla, uma resposta para ti a partir das fotos da Neela, mas outra pessoa. Como te sentiu depois da apresentação e depois de receber tanta violência na rua, preconceito? A apresentação para ti, não a apresentação, mas o vídeo, conseguiu te livrar de muita emoção que estava trancada? O processo te livrou de muita emoção travada dentro de ti?
Eu creio que pelo fato de eu já ter esse conhecimento da minha história, dos meus antepassados, né? A questão mais que estava trancada dentro de mim foi a questão da identidade indígena, porque eu sempre trabalhei mais com a identidade afro, e quando eu comecei a trabalhar, que foi sempre o meu objetivo desde o início, trabalhar com a identidade indígena, dentro de mim, sofri preconceito, sabe? Sobre a cultura. Tanto que quando eu fui fazer a pintura, eu estava bastante medo, eu estava muito nervosa. Então, naquele momento, eu senti que eu estava com preconceito, eu mesma, entendeu? E só depois de ter uma convivência com eles e ver a convivência da pintura no meu corpo, eu pude, assim, perceber, quebrei basicamente, eu como uma pessoa da pele clara, né, com uma pintura indígena, realmente foi um baque para a comunidade, mas também, enquanto eu sofria preconceito, também quebrava o preconceito, então quebrava o tabu, né, que muitas pessoas têm sobre os indígenas, a mulher indígena. Então, eu creio que foi um desencadeei, né, uma coisa que estava trancada dentro de mim, que foi de infância, ter um medo de indígena, uma coisa foi colocada dentro de mim, de ter medo, né, e o espetáculo me proporcionou isso para mim, chegar agora e desencadear.
Desculpa.
Verdadeiro.
Camylla is saying that she had great fear in being painted, and she recognized in that moment there was deep prejudice locked inside herself against herself. You know, she had received from her childhood right through till today great fear of the Indigenous people, and even though she has Indigenous roots. So being painted on clear skin, because she's mixed culture, meant that she received those insults, but also the process of making the performance for video, by the way, not for performance, for live performance. The live performance really was walking through the streets with her whole body painted. But those emotions were trapped, locked inside her. And the performance, its research and the video itself released her from the prison of that prejudice. Camylla, valeu tua resposta foi extremamente profunda, realmente boa. And thanks, Camylla, her response was really profound.
Thank you. So I would just like to, a question I have for Camylla, please. Within an artwork, and it relates to something, Dan, that you said to me, I think if I'm quoting right, Camylla wanted to know, is my voice important? Is that correct?
I missed your last, your last
how is my voice important, or is my voice important? But in relation to that, what would Camylla's response be to an idea behind this project of creating an artwork that is a virtual reality artwork that requires you to have an immersive, a headset on your head, and it's all totally internalized, of 360-degree imagery of well, I was thinking of botanical collections, and then as people walk through or navigate the botanical collections, they come across artwork such as Camylla's. So if they come up to a flower and a plant, and with their virtual hands, they touch the flower, that would trigger her performance or plant. How would she respond to that idea?
Can I translate that for her, and then also propose that Neelambari responds first, because this will give Camylla time to reflect on your question, and we'd hear a little more from Neela about a similar kind of question for you, Neela, really, which is, as an artist, I imagine your question would be both for Camylla, Jamie, and also for Neela. So I'll ask Camylla just to reflect on that, and you, while she's doing that, Neela can respond. Camylla, pergunta para ti refletir depois de responder depois de Neela. Como tu pensas sobre a ideia de participar num projeto em 360 graus virtual? Tu toca uma coisa, pessoas tocando uma imagem e aparece o espetáculo todo, mas em 360 graus, não uma tela, sabe? Mas um projeto, não precisa responder logo, a Neela primeiro vai responder, mas o que tu pensa sobre essa ideia de entrar no mundo virtual mais profundamente ainda, onde a experiência é 3 dimensões, não só uma telinha, mas tocando questões profundas como ela. Okay, Neela, continue with you.
Yeah, I think I will have to ask Jamie the question again, because I think I've missed the second half. Jamie, can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, so with the idea of the Good Living project being a virtual reality artwork that takes, for instance, botanical collections, for instance, at Winterbourne House and Gardens at Birmingham University, to create a 360 kind of nature-based environment, that people, that when you go into that environment with a headset, you can then go up to a plant or up to a flower, and then by touching that flower, you would trigger a performance such as Camylla's performance, or artwork created for contemporary Indigenous artists, or other artists, other ecological based artists. So the idea is how because to put that in a context, Dan mentioned, I think Camylla asked, is my voice important?
Aqui na velha, Jéssica. Às 3h30 eu saio.
So should we just go? Yeah, Neela, what did you respond?
I think it's a fantastic idea, but I was thinking that I think for example, if it's done in UK, so I'm just thinking of species, right? And species and significance and maybe something related. So in case of Camylla, if something that inspires from the plant species, which we probably have in common, or is there something that we see in the botanical gardens, either in Kew or something which is from Brazil, you know? And then maybe, you know, we could then have performance triggered, as you say, to that specific species of tree or flower, or since we're talking about botanical spaces and, you know, of winterborn gardens and things. But of course that could go further. I mean, it could also go to not just, I think there would be quite a number of examples from these botanical gardens which can relate to Brazil or India or anywhere. And then we could have art, whether it's music, whether it's a piece, or whether it's a virtual, what do you say, an exhibition of that artist or something, you know. If it's not performance based, then what else can be done? And I think that's where the discussion we need to take it, is to which artists are willing to, you know, then put in that aspect, because virtual reality would also need a certain kind of way of making that piece, and how you project it, because when you go in with the headset, the 360 angle, or you want dimensions, right? So I think that is where we have to discuss. So dance is very good, because you can have a 360 camera recording that thing, right? And then when you go into when you go to really visualize it, you can move around the space and experience that whole thing. And same with botanical gardens, if you can experience the say fauna, flora of that space. But also I'm thinking in more terms of actually making it significant for the artist, from wherever they come from. I'm just thinking on those lines, because I think many of the artists probably in this collection might be coming from different parts of the world. And do we have that kind of species? And it's not necessarily, but that the species has to come from that region, but it also could be something, an English oak can trigger something, or maybe, you know, what are the native English species? Oak is so common, but you know, so I think something like that, I think might trigger. And I think maybe as artists, as a group, we should sit together and think about this. I think that's where my mind is going in the first take. I don't know the second what might come, but first I think this is how my thinking is going immediately, to structure it a bit, divide it, think about species and regions, and or something like that. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Dan, pode repetir para minha pergunta?
Sim, Camylla, a pergunta é, imaginando projeto onde pessoas de diversos continentes usavam capacetes com a câmera 3D. E tu vai vivenciar a realidade de outras pessoas, ou tu pode até ter outras pessoas vivenciando a tua realidade. O que tu achas sobre esse tipo de projeto? Talvez estimulado por plantas ou por árvores, como uma entrada.
É uma ideia muito legal, né? Vai impactar bastante. Acho que quando uma coisa é forte, né? Ela se torna mais forte ainda quando está em 3D.
So Camylla is saying that she thinks the idea is interesting because the technology means that if the experience is already strong, like for instance the performance that she offers or the photography that Neela offers, then you get an even more intense experience in three-dimensional virtual reality.
Porém, seria também teria um pouco de desafio para quando as pessoas chegariam no caso, esse vídeo, esse projeto em 3D, porque nem todo mundo tem a possibilidade de de ter uma câmera 3D ou assistir algo assim em 3D, né? Mas que é um projeto legal que poderia tocar muitos assuntos também. Tocar as pessoas também é uma ideia muito boa.
Yeah, Camylla's main concern is that in people like her and people in the region that she knows, there would be very little access to this kind of technology. So it'd be a great challenge. You know, it's not available. And so even if she were to participate, her own people wouldn't be able to participate.
No entanto, também entraria a questão de a gente estar dando mais espaço, né, para tecnologia entrar mais em nossas vidas, nossos dados. Então, é uma coisa que a gente tem que pensar duas vezes, né, no caso, porque a gente está passando por dificuldade por causa das tecnologias. Então, a gente tem que pensar duas vezes e pensar muito bem como a gente vai envolver a tecnologia em nossos projetos, assim, que não possa impactar também a pessoa.
Yeah, her great concern as well is that, you know, technology is already invading the lives of many people, and you have to think very, very carefully about this, because even greater invasion of people's lives through technology is a very serious question, both in terms of human rights, but also in terms of how people become dependent on this kind of technology. These are concerns that have been concerning, which are also part of the spectacle, the performance that Camylla presented.
Thank you. So please, thank you, Camylla. So if we're now at 6, that's really significant and important for me to hear. Thank you. It's now 6:30, so we're due to stop at 6:30, unless anyone has anything pressing that they want to add or comment or talk about.
Camylla, em princípio, a gente está encerrando agora, mas ela está convidando qualquer pessoa, incluindo nós, de refletir sobre qualquer questão, tem mais uma reflexão.
I've put, so we've got another Good Living talk event, same time next Friday. I've put it into the link for the general kind of information into the chat here.
Jamie, I would just like to say really quickly, I thought Neela's photos, I was really struck by, Neela, when you said you almost had to give up your academic research and embrace the artist inside yourself to deal with these questions, which are difficult to research, you know, and difficult to really grasp. To falar Camylla para as fotos de Neela, são fotos bem profundas. Ela precisava largar a pesquisa acadêmica e abraçar a artista dentro dela, porque ela estava querendo tocar questões que não são fáceis para até falar. And I thought the other thing is just to say that good living, as people here probably know, good living is a Indigenous concept, which is pre-colonial and also post-capitalist. It's contemporary as well. And it's being reinvented for different continents. I see Julie there. Hi, Julie. And Camylla's seeing Julie as well. But just to say that the Patasho people, you know, so me and Manu, we worked with them in 1999 and 2000. Go back 20 years later, and they are living good living. And for them, the great danger, and this is the important point about the 6 lines of introduction at the very beginning, is that Bolsonaro, a fascist, elected fascist president inside Brazil, who is not likely to be re-elected, controls the Senate and controls the judiciary. And the Senate has the power to ratify a law which will render all indigenous peoples extinct, because then the big mining companies and the agribusiness, you know, the soya, genetically modified soya and beef and everything else that we eat, can move into those indigenous territories. It doesn't just put those civilizations at risk, but it accelerates ecocide. So in actual fact, the point that Camylla, I think what links Neela, Camylla, and myself as 3 artists is that, you know, you have climate refugees who are forced to migrate because of a violent model of development. You have the deforestation of the Amazon, and then the hypocrisy of Bolsonaro signing alongside Biden and Modi in India. You have the hypocrisy in that, but most importantly, you have guardians of good living whose civilization is at risk. And I think this means that we need to translate art, action through photography, through dance, through sculpture in today's cases, into policy and also into community. Policy in the sense that we need to stop ecocide immediately, and we need to imagine new forms of education where people can, like Neela was saying, you know, where you have kind of climate education in school. But we also need to think of schools and communities as a place where people can learn to make good living. So it's not just to study it in other cultures, but to practice it inside their own gardens and their own homes and their own schools. And I think that's what Camylla is trying to do. I'll tell this to Camylla afterwards to save time, but I think that's very important. Camylla, vou explicar depois para ti o que eu acabei de falar, mas eu sei que tu entende tudo que eu falei. Huh? Yeah, Camylla understood a great deal from just the Latin origins of English.
So I think that there's more for us to talk about, and we definitely will come back to these questions. I just wanted to thank you all for taking part, and everyone for coming and listening and being part of this conversation. And obviously thank Being Human Festival for providing us the space to do this, and Climate Museum UK and Cultural Affairs Emergency, of course. And thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I just loved, I was very difficult to, I was made speechless really by the work. So I found it difficult to really come up with questions. And I think probably everyone was the same. It was so powerful, and thank you very much.